Ryan, a man unlucky in gambling, is on the brink of despair. His debts keep growing, and his career as a chef just isn't working out. He has no idea where he can get the money to pay off what he owes. Suddenly, an old friend with whom he once studied at culinary school invites him to Latin America. Hoping at least to temporarily hide from his problems, Ryan flies to the jungle. Jack sends a chauffeur for him and includes a letter apologizing for not being able to greet him in person, but assuring him that, for now, he can rest at his villa and indulge himself in every way. Before long, Ryan arrives at a luxurious house surrounded by a tropical garden and goes inside. It appears Jack has everything one could want: a lavish home, fine wines, and expensive ingredients. Ryan immediately cooks himself dinner and enjoys it while taking in the stunning view from the poolside terrace. In the morning, the friends meet, and Jack tells Ryan that he's traveled a lot: Italy, Turkey, Spain, the Balkans, because he works for some Slovenian catering agency that sends him to fancy places where he has to find certain products and cook dinner for a group of very wealthy people. That's the only perk of the job, however, since these rich clients want something extremely exotic. But he refuses to elaborate. Early the next morning, Jack drives his friend to a neighboring town where they enjoy themselves in a small restaurant discussing personal matters. Both men are single and have no commitments. The only difference is that Jack has never known financial difficulties, unlike Ryan. Before long, the guys meet an Australian named Alice, who is traveling the world alone. Learning that both men are chefs, she provokes them into a contest to see who is the better cook. They suggest she be the judge of a competition they'll arrange just for her. The three of them head to the villa, and the two chefs start cooking a dish so Alice can decide whose food she prefers. Ryan wins. Afterward, they go for a swim in the pool and then sit on the terrace for a long time. Alice notices a strange argument over a watch and finds out that Ryan once lost it to Jack, who refuses to give it back. That night, Alice sleeps in Jack's room, which bothers Ryan a bit, and in the morning, Ryan receives a warning. He has only 3 days left to pay his debt. He goes to the kitchen where he meets Jack, who has already been to town and dropped Alice off at a hotel, but now Jack needs to leave again for more supplies. Taking advantage of Jack leaving his laptop on and unlocked, Ryan discovers that Jack has nearly £2 million in his account. When Jack returns, they settle down by the pool and chat. Ryan notices that something weighs heavily on Jack's mind, but Jack only complains about life. In the morning, Ryan finds Jack hanged. Not knowing what to do, he takes down the body and wraps it in plastic. Then he tries to hack Jack's laptop, but can't because he doesn't know the password. He finds a wallet containing a bank card and calls the bank, attempting to obtain the codes. But without the secret word, he's asked to come to their office in London. Ryan finds a specialist on the internet and orders forged driver's licenses, then books a ticket to London. But just then, a message arrives from his creditors, warning that if he doesn't pay his debt within 2 days, his mother will suffer. That night, Ryan drowns his friend's body in a pond. He tries to borrow money again, but his acquaintances no longer trust him. He'll only waste the funds at the casino, just as he's done many times before. He returns to the villa, where he sees a car parked out front. It turns out that representatives of the agency have arrived: Imogen, a Brit, and Maurice, a Colombian. They don't know what Jack looks like, since he's never worked in Latin America before. Flustered, Ryan pretends to be Jack, especially since he's also a skilled chef. He asks them for an advance and is stunned when Imogen unhesitatingly transfers $50,000 to his account. He immediately forwards the money to his creditor and then goes back to Imogen, who wants to know if he has checked the produce. Ryan has no clue what's expected of him and has to admit he hasn't picked anything out yet because he doesn't speak Spanish, which also surprises Imogen. Ultimately, she heads into town with the men to buy some meat. There, Ryan learns that he was supposed to find 2 people who would become the main ingredients for dinner. Imogen suggests looking among the churchgoers, since there's a better chance of finding healthy people who don't use banned substances. Ryan can't believe what's happening, but Imogen is surprised at his incompetence, even though she was warned about the chef's questionable character. Noticing his disbelief, she bluntly warns that they'll simply kill him. Waiting for nightfall, Ryan gathers his things and tries to leave the house. But in the foyer, Maurice and Imogen are still up. She explains that the guests pay $1.5 million for dinner, and that's actually not much. The agency kills, on average, 75 people a year. They give back 10% of their income to the regions to develop local businesses and infrastructure so people can have clean water and quality food. No company in the world can boast such profits while also helping 99% of the rest of the population. Oil companies kill about 150 people a year, and at farms at least 250 die. Don't even get her started on drivers and roofers. Imogen advises Ryan to think it over. Ryan has no choice but to go back to his bedroom. In the morning, the men drive to town. They pick 2 women to target, follow them, and soon arrive in a poor neighborhood. Unexpectedly, their intended victims vanish. They stop the car and look around. Suddenly, they're hailed by a young man working at a small auto repair shop. Martin glances at Ryan, who nods his approval. Martin then asks the guy to check underneath his car because something is knocking around. The mechanic, who's offered a generous tip, eagerly crawls under the car. Meanwhile, Ryan starts the engine, its noise masking the muffled gunshot as Martin kills the young man with a silenced pistol. At that moment, a policeman arrives with the 2 women the men had stalked earlier. Martin manages to shove the victim's legs under the car so the policeman doesn't notice the body. He explains they're scouting the area because their company intends to build a hotel in the town. He flatly denies any pursuit, insisting they're just examining the locale. The men have to show the sergeant their documents, and after that he leaves. They manage to shove the body into the car and decide to give up finding a second victim, as the policeman clearly remembers them. Arriving back at the villa, Maurice helps Ryan drag the young man's body to the butchering room and leaves it to Ryan. Mustering his courage, Ryan sets about dismembering the body. Imogen reminds him that one of the requested dishes involves tongue. Seeing that Ryan is operating professionally, she relaxes and contacts the clients, assuring them that everything will be first-rate. Meanwhile, Maurice tells Ryan that a letter has arrived in his name, then heads off to arrange the meet. Ryan takes a shower, trying to compose himself. Later, he opens the envelope and finds the forged driver's licenses in Jack's name. Grabbing his things, he rushes to the car and drives out of the yard, but accidentally hits the gardener and then crashes into a stone, causing the engine to stall. Martin appears, startled by his behavior, and reminds him that they can track him anywhere in the world. Ryan tries to ask the hitman about remorse, but Martin doesn't get it. He's well paid, and his co-workers are pleasant. He recalls only one person who ever quit, a chef named Greta. He knows she refused the money on the condition that she could meet with the bosses. A month later, she sent him a letter from Mallorca where she'd become a chef for a wealthy family. Buoyed by the possibility, Ryan gets to work on a menu that greatly pleases Imogen. Soon, the first guests arrive at the villa and are shown to the terrace. Unexpectedly, a police car pulls up to the gate. Imogen orders them to let the detectives in, who ask to see the owner. She explains that he's not currently here and mentions that there's a dinner party today for investors who plan to build a hotel. Ruiz shows Imogen a photo of a missing man, his nephew, Jose. 2 Americans were seen speaking with a sergeant earlier. After that, Jose disappeared. Imogen says Martin is not around, so Ruiz asks for permission to wait for him. She wonders why they're so sure Jose is missing. Maybe he just went off somewhere? But the policeman insists Jose would never do that, given that his newborn daughter's christening is tomorrow. He's suspicious about Imogen's phrase, spontaneous adventures, and asks to see the other American. She takes him to the kitchen. Ryan explains that cooking is just a hobby and that in reality, he's an architect. It turns out that Ruiz is interested in architecture and starts asking questions about the upcoming construction project. Questions Ryan can't always answer logically. When Ruiz shows him the photo, Ryan notes that Jose resembles his deceased friend but claims not to have seen the young man. Imogen has to bail Ryan out because it's obvious he knows nothing about building, but his dishes look absolutely stunning, even though Ruiz finds the smell of the meat suspicious. Imogen warns the guests that the police are here, but they say they know how to conduct themselves. Returning to the kitchen, she finds the officers eating. They rave about the soup, remarking that Ryan must be in the wrong profession, as he knows nothing about architecture but cooks unbelievably well. Imogen pulls Ryan aside and scolds him for not bothering to learn his story. At that moment, more guests arrive, and she goes off to greet them. Ruiz questions Martin, who also doesn't admit to seeing Jose. The detective then confides that he was alarmed by Imogen's remark about spontaneous adventures. People in this area disappear, 2 per year typically, and then suddenly send messages saying they've decided to go off on spontaneous trips, which doesn't fit with how ordinary workers behave. And now, when he came here for the christening, his nephew decided to take a spontaneous trip as well. Ruiz shows the guests the photo, but they can't say anything definite because they've only just arrived. However, they invite him to join them for dinner, and he sits down at the table. Just then, Martin reports that someone has shown up asking for Jack. Imogen meets Alice, but however much she tries to usher her out, Alice practically forces her way into the kitchen. Alice is puzzled about why Ryan is being called Jack, but he explains that he's standing in for him because Jack abruptly decided to go home. At this point, the sergeant leaves, eager to get back to his family. Alice continues to question Ryan, while Ruiz does the same with the guests, curious why they're taking such a risk. They explain there's no point in living without risk. Alice notices blood in a ladle and is shocked, not understanding what he's cooking. Ryan begs her to leave, but she refuses to believe that Jack has gone, and she notices that Ryan is wearing Jack's watch. Scared, Alice tries to leave. She gets in her car, but it won't start. Martin comes to help her. Meanwhile, the detective is enthusiastically devouring his nephew's flesh and asks to see the chef so he can thank him personally. At the same time, Ryan asks Imogen to arrange a meeting with the bosses, admitting that he wants to do what Greta supposedly did. But Imogen reveals that Greta didn't quit at all. She became a dish. Imogen herself writes the letters. Ryan realizes that he can't escape from this horrific business. He goes over to the table where he's met with applause. The detective tries once again to find out what kind of meat it is, but Ryan insists that it's regular pork with his special sauce. And now, for dessert, they will be served tongue sashimi. Ryan then discovers that the tongue has spoiled. At that moment, Alice peeks in to say that Maurice has agreed to drive her to the hotel since her car is broken. Soon, the promised dish is served to the guests. Ryan slips the detective a note arranging a meeting in the bathroom. The detective rushes there and learns he's just eaten his nephew. Feeling sick, he vomits and then announces he's leaving, having discovered everything he needed to know. In truth, however, he sneaks into the butchering room where Alice's tongueless body lies. Ryan explains that the agency does this all around the world and shows him Jose's head. The detective gets sick again, but most importantly, he's left his phone in the kitchen. Ryan offers to fetch it while Ruiz hides in the garden, but the guests stop Ryan to thank him for the exquisite dinner, saying they were ready to leave. Ryan grabs the detective's phone, but Imogen intercepts him. The detective returns to the house to examine Alice's body and runs into Martin, who kills him with a saw. Ryan finds the detective's body and accepts there is no escape. They dispose of the evidence together, while Imogen writes a fake letter to Jose's wife, claiming he left for Bogota. The next morning, she praises Ryan's culinary skills, tells him he'll be rich, and implants a tracking chip in his neck before sending him back to London, urging him to prepare for the agency's next dinner in Africa. Ryan arrives at the airport and meets a random fellow traveler who, upon learning the conditions of his job and his pay, is envious. Ryan confidently introduces himself as Jack, a slow-paced but gripping crime thriller with its own concept and strong performances. The very premise of the film suggests that sometimes it's better not to know what your food is made of.